My name is Nero Wolfe. I work with crime. Against it.
April 6, Florida. This is the way it happened. I mean, this is the way the newspaper said it happened, allowing for 16% lousy reporting, which is normal, and 19% inaccuracy, which is inevitable. This is the way it probably happened. The occasion? A 7th attempt to shoot the moon. These men were doing all the work. These were only the scientists who built the missile. Dr. Wolfgang of the Air Force Missile Center. Associate Professor Adams of the Carnegie Institute of Technology. Christian Lowenberg of the Belson Aeronautics Company. Ernest Patchen of the Missile Development Center.
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
That was how and when Dr. Christian Lowenberg, missile scientist, died at the precise moment of the takeoff of moon missile number 7. Now, I'd be inclined to say on this Monday morning, 6 days later, that we occupants of the private house on West 35th Street, New York City, were about as deeply concerned with the death of Christian Lowenberg as the man on the moon. In the first place, I had a much bigger problem on my hands. Nero Wolfe had a cold.
Where? Archie was 13 seconds late. You have to feed a cold on time.
You have to starve a fever. We're debating which to do.
Well, whether to kill me or cure me, Archie, I'm horizontal, but I'm not helpless.
Yes, sir.
Only Fritz would think of a hint of sage in a plover omelet.
How true. Well, what have we got here? Oh, look. The Yanks take a game from the Sox.
Free.
All right. Associates in tribute to Lowenberg, April 12th, special to the New York Gazette. The widow of Christian Lowenberg today released to the press the text of messages sent to her by friends and admirers of her late husband. Dr. Lowenberg, who was a 5-gold polo player and a sailing enthusiast, as well as one of the world's leading space scientists, collapsed and died last Wednesday at the very moment of the takeoff of the Neptune missile. His death was attributed to heart failure brought on by the strain he must have endured at the very moment of launching. My late husband, said Mrs. Lowenberg.
That's enough.
What's the matter?
I dislike widows born depressed before the body is cold in the grave.
You want more serious feelings?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Well, how about this? Financial statement of the Wolfe household, drawn up by A. Goodwin for N. Wolfe and signed in blood.
Archie, I'm a sick man.
Sick, Schmick. The fact of the matter is, your accounts show that you owe $6,000.
You're ruining my breakfast.
And 98 cents.
$6,000?
And 98 cents.
How's that possible?
There's your Rembrandt etching, shipment of orchids from Bimini.
How many days ago did that moon person die?
6 days, but I fail to see what one has to do with the other.
Let the connection between the death of a scientist and our financial affairs remain obvious only to me. It takes genius to see that relationship. There is only one genius in this room at this time.
Mm-hmm.
What is that in the second paragraph about the dead man's athletic ability?
Bless you.
Never mind. Take out your pad. These are your instructions for the day. Call the papers and tell them that Nero Wolfe said Christian Lowenberg was murdered.
Murdered?
After you've called the papers, there are certain chores I want you to perform.
The afternoon papers carried it, of course, and carried it big. Out of the several million persons who read the statement, there were precisely 5 whom Wolfe wanted to read it. The first was Professor Adams, who sat next to Lowenberg when he died. The second was Dr. Ernest Patchen, who sat on Lowenberg's left. Number 3 was Dr. Wolfgang, who also sat on the panel that day. The fourth party Wolfe was interested in was the widow of the deceased, Mrs. Christian Lowenberg. I went to see the fifth party personally, because Wolfe wanted a first-hand report on his reaction. Is there a Mr. Belson, or is that a fancy trade name like Stanley Steeman?
There is a Mr. Belson, but if you don't have an
You take
appointment...
this specially engraved card, $7.50 a hundred, and tell Mr. Belson that a perfectly fascinating young man wants to see him about Dr. Lowenberg.
Dr. Lowenberg? But he...
He's dead. That's right. But don't let that worry your pretty little head. Go on. Funny thing about that receptionist, when she left the room, she was beautiful. When she came back, she was only cute, by comparison.
I'm Leslie Guerin, Mr. Belson's assistant.
He needs that kind of assistance.
What can I do for you?
Take me in to see Mr. Belson.
Mr. Belson is very busy.
Miss Guerin, let's not engage in a duel of wits. Tell the busy Mr. Belson that Archie Goodwin is here to see him. And Mr. Goodwin is Mr. Nero Wolfe's prime minister.
Nero Wolfe? Come with me.
I've always been an admirer of Belson Aeronautics. Ever since I've been a little boy. I think you people put out a damn fine propeller. Airplanes are terrible, but you sure put out a dandy little propeller.
Come in.
Work for Nero Wolfe?
Yes, sir.
What does he mean saying that Dr. Lowenberg was murdered?
Dr. Lowenberg worked as head of the missile development for this company, did he not?
I'll answer questions when you answer questions. Who hired Wolfe to find out if Dr. Lowenberg was murdered?
Who hired Wolfe to find out who murdered Dr. Lowenberg is the correct way to phrase that question. The correct answer is, I'm not at liberty to say.
Then get out. If Wolfe wants answers, tell him to come and get them himself.
Nero Wolfe hasn't left his house since that time I threatened to leave for the FBI. Staying home is one of his little eccentricities.
Another is sending rude young men to ask us stupid questions for him.
At which point I'm supposed to say, oh, come now, Mr. Belson, can't we pause...
Get out of here!
Oh, don't bawl her out for letting me in. She was helpless in the presence of charm. I came, I saw...
The orchid and I are listening to Scarlatti. I have no proof, but it seems to me that Scarlatti improves the color shading much more than any prelude by Chopin.
What happens when you play rock and roll?
Don't be obscene. What did you find out in the library?
Well, his name is Dr. Christian Peter Lowenberg, aged 43, time of death, born Dusseldorf, Germany, educated various technical institutions.
What did you find out it was not in Who's Who?
All right. I conned the city library. I perused several magazine articles, and I found that this Lowenberg once worked for a man by the name of Goering. Herman? They were building a rocket to shoot across the English Channel. A ridiculous idea. Anyway, I found that this Lowenberg was never a big shot in Germany. He was always an assistant to somebody else's assistant. He once worked for a man by the name of Wolfgang.
Go on.
Well, the war is over, and this rat race begins between us and Russia to find out who could come up with the most German scientists. We get Wolfgang for our Air Force, and he brings Lowenberg over with him as his assistant. But this Lowenberg must have been a smooth talker, because within about 6 months, he had talked himself out of the Air Force and into this cushy job with Belson Aeronautics as head of their missile division.
Anything else?
Well, he had beautiful baby blue eyes, according to one awestruck female feature writer. He must have had some muscle, too, because he was a crack fencer, a devil of a fellow in a sailboat. He was deaf in one ear. He got that way from playing polo, an accident.
I take it that's all you come up with now.
Well, it's a synopsis. I'll type up the details. Anybody call?
Yes. Dr. Adams, Dr. Patchen, Dr. Wolfgang, Mrs. Lowenberg, and Mr. Belson.
All screaming over the phone, no doubt.
Demanding who, just who, has retained me in this investigation.
Did you tell him it was Mr. Figment?
No. I told him I would divulge the name of my employer tomorrow night in this house at 9 o'clock sharp.
But, Mr. Wolfe, how can you do that?
Never mind. I need 24 hours before the mob descends upon me. Take out your pad. First, there is an object I want you to find out about. It's in the funeral parlor, or in the coffin, or in the city dump by now. Perhaps you can guess what it is.
I've never heard such tommy rot in my life. How dare you go around making such a response?
I fully intend to get to the bottom of it.
Then let me state the case another way. Dr. Lowenberg died, to use what is to me a rather vulgar colloquialism, at the final stroke of the countdown. The moment of death is important because it seems to have led a lot of people to assume that as the tension grew during the countdown, so did the strain on Dr. Lowenberg's heart, until, like a dam, strained beyond its normal capacity, it burst. Emotional excitement, usually a logical explanation of a heart attack. I ask you, however, to consider one annoying fact. Dr. Lowenberg was an athletic man. He played polo, he fenced, he sailed boats. Now, ladies and gentlemen, athletes do die of heart attacks, true. But they do not die of excitement.
All right, then. He didn't get the heart attack from excitement. He got it from any one of 100 purely physical reasons. So what?
At the exact moment of the takeoff, Dr. Patchen, middle-aged athletes die of a heart attack in their office, on the street, in bed, or at any unforeseen ordinary moment. But they do not die at that torturous split second when a voice through a microphone says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Life does not write such cheap melodrama unless it is so manipulated. Which is why certain parties have seen fit to retain me to determine how Dr. Lowenberg really died.
Okay, so we finally get to it. Who is hiring you, Wolfe?
You, all of you.
Oh, sheer and utter
You're out
nonsense,
of your
I tell you
mind.
that. I never heard of you until yesterday.
You're more fortunate than most, madame. I make this guarantee. I shall bring the murderer or murderess to justice in rapid time. If the police should beat me to the solution, you'll pay nothing.
What do you mean, pay?
My fees are exorbitant.
You know, you're also a fool. I never heard anything so preposterous.
One point seems to have eluded all of you in the general hysteria of the moment. I, Nero Wolfe, have stated categorically that Christian Lowenberg was murdered. I'm not a crackpot, a sensationalist, or a paranoid publicity hound. I'm Nero Wolfe, and I've some standing in my profession. Only a fool would call me a fool, Mr. Belson. You've already seen what the newspapers do when I state an opinion. I say a man was murdered, and millions of people in this country are convinced that it was murder because I, Nero Wolfe, said so. Very well. Whether you know it or not, soon the police will be knocking at your doors. All of you knew the deceased. 3 of you were within murdering distance when he died. Surely you must realize that by now, all of you are under suspicion of murder. You will remain under this dark cloud until the true murderer is being brought to justice. You can ask the police to do it for you, which will be messy, inefficient, and time-consuming. You will suffer acute physical, business, and even social embarrassment for a long time to come. On the other hand, I guarantee to solve the case for you quickly, efficiently, if expensively. Well?
How much?
A gauche question, but a good one. I have here an agreement of retainer. Mr. Goodwin will distribute carbon copies. It is, I assure you, as legally binding as the day is long. And here I have a list of your individual contributions to my fee. The amounts are prorated according to your individual incomes.
Incomes? You've been prying into my personal affairs.
I have, Mr. Belson. Business is business.
This phrase here, to deliver the guilty party within the shortest possible time. Now, in cold numbers, just what do you mean by the shortest possible time?
I mean the shortest possible time. It's a fair figure, Dr. Adams. On a pro rata basis, eminently fair.
You've got me down for $7,000, and you've got him down for $150.
At the risk of sounding offensive to Dr. Wolfgang, I feel that you will miss your $7,000 less than he will feel the pinch of contributing $150. Besides, you can contrive to make it deductible, can't you?
All right. I'm speaking now as your employer. Put up or shut up. Just when do you come up with a solution to this so-called murder?
Now, sir. Right now.
What?
Will you be kind enough to take your place? Archie.
Bless you, Mr. Wolfe.
Thank you. Fortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we are fellow members of the only civilization in the history of the race that can raise the past from the limbo of the dead. We don't call it a miracle. We call it motion picture film. Ready, Archie?
Ready, Mr. Wolfe.
We will dispense with the sound. I will supply my own. I make no pretense at understanding what goes on here. Ah, now we are in more familiar territory. I'm sure you gentlemen need no introduction to yourselves. I ask you to notice above everything else the hand of Dr. Lowenberg. Sound, Archie.
1, 0.
Enough, Archie. I propound a simple riddle. Why did Dr. Lowenberg reach in his pocket? At the sound of 1, the deafening roar of the takeoff begins. Dr. Lowenberg heard the sound coming up, so he put his hand in his pocket to turn his hearing aid down.
So what, Mr. Wolfe, so what?
Very well put, sir. Archie. The late Dr. Lowenberg's hearing aid.
Where did you get it?
What does it matter? It is here. Mr. Faversham, if you please. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Faversham is an engineer employed by the Accutone Hearing Aid Association, manufacturers of this. Mr. Faversham will favor us with a few words.
At Mr. Wolfe's request, our laboratory spent last night and this morning examining this particular model. First, we found that somebody had completely reversed the mechanism. That is, in this particular model, when the amplification is turned up, the sound will go down. And if it is turned down, the sound will go up. That isn't all. Cleverly concealed within the case...
Thank you, Mr. Faversham. I will take it from here. Now, any of you scientific gentlemen could have reversed the mechanism, but not every one of you could have done one other thing. That needed a very special knowledge. Now, this particular aid contains an astonishing gadget. No bigger than a thimble, though Mr. Faversham informs me that it can magnify the frequency of sound to such high degree, so high that it could shock the nervous system and paralyze the action of the heart. Now, take the horrendous sound of the missile takeoff and magnify it with this maniacal device, and burst it into the human ear, then you have the sound that kills. The sound that killed Dr. Lowenberg. Now, who would know about such a device? I have here a book, The Story of Nazi Science. On page 122, there's a reference to an invention, the explosier. It says no bigger than a thimble, and yet it could amplify sound to such proportions that when it was tested on prisoners of war, it killed some and drove the others insane. The name of the inventor of this explosier is Dr. Erich Hans Wolfgang.
If you're presuming to accuse me of such fantastic...
Why did you do it, Herr Doctor? Were you jealous of the upstart disciple of yours, so much younger, so much more charming, so much more successful in the new world, which puts such a premium on youth and charm and looks?
Where did you get it? It would be impossible to...
The question is, where did you get it? You could have had this one stolen from Lowenberg and substituted with another one while he worked on it. Now, to steal a man's hearing aid, you could make arrangement with the man's wife, who took it from him while he slept.
No! Never. Not I. Never. I know nothing about it. I swear to God.
Tell me where you got it. It would be impossible. Impossible.
Not the wife. No. The wife did not take it from the bedside of the sleeping man. But the mistress could do it. Oh, yes. The mistress could take it.
Why didn't you destroy it? You said you destroyed it.
Now it's beginning to make sense. Dr. Lowenberg and Miss Gier working in the same office. The romantic scientist and the lovely assistant to the boss. Why did you do it, Miss Gier? Did the romantic space scientist tell you were seeking new heavenly bodies?
Where did you get it? It's impossible. We destroyed it.
Of course you did. This is not Dr. Lowenberg's hearing aid. This is merely a duplicate.
Well, who's this guy?
An excellent actor, don't you think? Bravo. A magnificent performance, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wolfe. I enjoyed it myself.
But how did you know that Lowenberg's hearing aid was rigged like that? How did you find out?
Oh, these are merely details. It is late, and I have a cold. Ladies and gentlemen, you may go home now. And be sure that your bank accounts are in good condition. Mr. Goodwin will be around tomorrow to collect. Good night. Archie, after you've called the police, ring for some cold beer.
So you read between the lines better than any of the other 3 million readers of the New York Gazette. Only you realized that as an athlete, he couldn't have died of overexcitement. Well, what put you on to old Wolfgang?
Well, since he was killed so scientifically, it could have only been a scientist who killed him.
Why Wolfgang?
Sheer elimination. None of the others had ever been involved with high-frequency sound.
And you got all that just from listening to me read the paper to you?
Mm-hmm. Just so.
No, you didn't.
What are you saying?
No, you didn't.
You're being impertinent, aren't you?
I am, sir. You had read that story before I got here with breakfast. You had it all doped out even before I got here.
Are you accusing me of...
Yes, sir. I read the story to you. And then you said to me, and I quote absolutely verbatim, Archie, what was that in the second paragraph about the dead man's athletic ability? Now, how did you know that line was in the second paragraph if you hadn't already read the story?
Go to bed, Archie. We've got a busy day tomorrow. You have to collect $11,000, the amount due to us, deducting Dr. Wolfgang's contribution of $150, which we can forego under the circumstances.
You're evading the issue.
Whatever you do tomorrow, don't disturb me. I intend to sleep for a week. Please don't interrupt my cold again.
You haven't answered my question.
Good night, Archie.
Good night, Mr. Wolfe.